Hey everybody, how's it going? So today, Mr. Clinton, come back, Mr. Clinton. I just hit start recording. Clinton, are you trying to renegotiate your salary in the middle of a video? Wow, wow. Anyway, so we are going to do this video without him. So I wanted to discuss this little piece of news here. It says Biden asks OSHA to order vaccine mandates at large employers. The agency is expected to issue an emergency temporary standard to carry out the requirement, which will affect more than 80 million workers. The idea here is to require employers that employ more than 100 people to require COVID vaccines from their employees. So rather than it being I have a mandate at my business, the government would mandate that I have a mandate at my business if I have more than 100 employees. And they're also floating the idea of if you don't want to do this, then just have them do regular COVID tests. I don't know how effective the regular COVID test would be. It would depend on how regular they wind up being. If I get a COVID test on Monday and I'm negative, I go to work, I go to the deli at 3 p.m. to get a sandwich, I get infected, I could be spreading COVID Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday until the next COVID test on Monday. But I get what they're trying to do with the vaccines. I understand. They want to they want to have less hospitals filled up with COVID patients that are unvaccinated, and they want to get closer to herd immunity. I understand what they're going for there. It makes sense to me. The idea of doing it via mandate, though, is going to be it's going to get interesting, and I think it's going to have certain effects on society, and I also think it brings up certain conflict questions that I wanted to raise with this video. The article says it levels the playing field, said Ian Schaefer, a partner at the law firm Loeb & Loeb, who specializes in labor issues and has been advising companies on their COVID policies, particularly in service industries or industries where they may have been represented by minority populations or lower wage earners, who are disproportionately likely to not be vaccinated. Those employers were reluctant to push out a vaccine mandate because they thought that they'd lose talent. The idea here is if I put out a vaccine mandate saying everybody here is to be vaccinated, and one of my employees doesn't want to get vaccinated and he's one of my best employees, then he could just go across the street to another company that does what I do and say, I want a job, here's what I'm able to do, and if they don't have a vaccine mandate, then, well, it sucks to be me. I'm going to lose out on employees. I'm going to lose out on good talent as a result of people who don't want to get vaccinated leaving and going somewhere else. It would level the playing field if every company was required to have a vaccine mandate. This way, the company across the street couldn't tell my employee, hey, you don't want to get vaccinated, you can come over here. You can come over here and work for us. We don't have that. So that's the idea here that they're going for. And it says some unions have been wary of mandates, with members worrying about potential health side effects or bristling at the idea of an employer interfering in what they regard as a personal health decision. I personally have not issued a vaccine mandate at my business because it is not something that I am comfortable doing. I said that back in April, I got vaccinated. I told my employees, again, nothing bad happened to me as a result of it. I think it makes sense to do. I encourage them to, but I am not mandating it. One of my employees came up to me and said, I had COVID last year. I beat it. I don't want to get vaccinated. It's like, I'm not going to cut your pay because of it. I'm not going to be passive aggressive. I'm not going to say you can't work here anymore. And that was that. Like I didn't do a mandate. I said I got it. I encouraged it, but if you didn't get it, at the end of the day, I didn't care. And that's the way I thought it should be. Now, the question that would be very interesting here, it kind of dates back to what was going on last year. So last year, there was a lot of question on liability. There was a lot of question on when you had these COVID relief bills that they were trying to tie corporate liability shields into it. And there was a lot of arguing back and forth with regards to this. And it's an interesting question, because if there's going to be liability on the company in any way, shape, or form with anything regarding COVID, would there also be an argument for there to be any sort of liability on the company if they mandate you get something and you have an adverse effect from it? So, for instance, let's say you have an employee, I don't know, that's younger than you, that eats chicken and broccolis, that plays soccer and goes running on a regular basis, that just had a physical right before getting the vaccine and is completely healthy, and then gets the vaccine 2 days later, feels like he's having a heart attack, goes to the doctor who thinks he's having a heart attack, winds up in the hospital with myocarditis and heart inflammation. At that point, would that person be able to hold me liable as a business owner if I had mandated a vaccine versus just say, I got it, but you do you? It's an interesting question. Now, with COVID, it's very difficult to prove where you got COVID. Did that employee get COVID at my business, or did that employee get COVID when he was at a gym? Did he get COVID when he was playing pool with his friends? It's very difficult to tell. I mean, there's contact tracing, but contact tracing in a city that's about the size, an area about the size of Knoxville, Tennessee, with 8.5 million people, where you have subway cars that transport 60 people at a time. Contact tracing is going to be a pretty difficult thing to actually do here, to pinpoint you got COVID from this person, not that person, when you're in a city that's this population dense. Just get on the subway. Look at how many people are in a single train car during rush hour, and you'll get the idea. It's pretty difficult to figure out where you got COVID. But if you have an adverse effect a day or two after you take the vaccine and you end up in the hospital for it, it would be simple to draw that back to the person who forced you to get the vaccine, in this case, your employer. And it does beg the question of what would their liability be. By the way, for the people who've been calling in about more advanced data recoveries and asking why isn't it done yet, I assure you we have a policy at Rossman Repair Group, Inc. We've always had this policy, even pre-COVID. You don't get to die until you finish your queue. I tried to bring a Pure Air VLF 48 and a PC 3000 into the hospital. They would not let it through, but we are going to try again. I'm half kidding about the trying to bring stuff into the hospital. Not kidding about the you're not allowed to die until you finish your queue. It's sad that actually became serious, but that used to be a joke that we would say several years ago when we were stressed and had busy queues. It's not something I ever thought I'd be saying to a longtime loyal employee who's actually in a hospital. But gallows humor. Now, there are other things to consider here, and one of the other things I would consider here is how this is going to incentivize people going forward. I think that every time you have a giant recession, that you get a bunch of people who decide, screw normal jobs, screw traditional jobs, they're going to try starting their own businesses. This is something I talked about in this video here. People aren't returning to demeaning jobs. Hampton's labor shortage proves my point. In this article, you have one person that was let go by their employer because of COVID, and they had less customers. They were let go. While they were let go, they figured out that they could use their skill set to actually make more money working for themselves. They were forced to figure out if they could make more money working for themselves. Once they figured out, once they were taken away from the stability of a paycheck. I forget who said it. There was someone who said one of the best ways to enslave a person is to, I forget who said it, it's tip of my tongue. One of the best ways to enslave someone for the rest of their life is give them just enough to live. It'll keep them from pursuing their dreams. But a lot of people are figuring out that they could just start their own business. And a lot of these people are figuring out, I make way more money working for myself than I ever did working for the company. I'm just going to work for myself. I wonder how many people who are not going to be able to work at their existing company or competitors to their existing company are just going to go out on their own, and if they decide not to get vaccinated, and become freelancers. They're just going to work at either start their own business with under 100 employees or just freelance for other businesses to where they are not employees. Will you see a lot more 1099ing going on after this happens so that they don't have to deal with this? There was one particular running joke that we've had here for a long time. Right before I moved to the new store and right before the whole COVID mess happened, there was this one requirement in New York, and I don't remember all the details of it. It's been several years, so I apologize if I get one wrong. Clinton! He had a mouse in his mouth, Erica. Did you see that? He had the little mouse toy in his mouth when he jumped up. Come here, boy. Come here. Anyway, there was this requirement that if you had more than 15 employees, I believe it was I had to make a presentation on our sexual harassment policy, but also an educational presentation on what is and isn't allowed. And I had to send them to some class that they had to spend time in to get sexual harassment training and education. And we've had this running joke here at Rossman Repair Group for the past several years, which every time we get close to having 14 employees, as to A, who's going to be let go, or B, okay, so when are we starting the sequel to Rossman Repair Group, or Rossman Repair Group version 2 or 3, because nobody here wants to deal with that, including myself. In 13 years, I've had one instance of someone who did something that could be considered sexual harassment. There was a person who had an amazing resume, showed up in a suit, had a military history, great resume, great interview, and then he just made some joke about having anal sex with the receptionist within earshot of the receptionist with no idea, no concept that this is not okay. So I fired him right there, just on the spot, bye, you're gone. if you've made it to the age of 34 or 36 or 40 or 50 and you do that, it's not because you didn't have education. It's not because you didn't take a class. It's because you're an asshole. The class is not going to change it. The policy, like that, none of that, you know that that's wrong. If you're 32 or 36 years old, you know what you did was fucked up and wrong. If you're doing that to someone that you just met that's at work, you know what you did is fucked up. Like, you're being a prick, and that's not something that I can fix with education. That's something that I fix by just telling you to get the fuck out of here. You're fired, which is what we did. So we've always had this kind of running gag of if every time you get to close to 15 employees of, okay, when are we starting Roster and Repair Group version 2 to get around this? And I also do wonder if there are small businesses, obviously you can't do this with Apple or Chevron or Microsoft, or Amazon, where you have 50 to 500,000 employees. But if you have a business with like 126 employees, I really do wonder if the businesses that don't want to deal with this just wind up opening, David's Pharmacy version 2 and just having half of their payroll on and half of their income go to these two companies. I do, but more so than that, I really do wonder if you're going to have a lot of people that just decide, okay, I can't go to work at any of these businesses anymore unless I get the vaccine. I wonder if this is going to be an incentive structure for people to start their own small businesses or become freelancers. And I think that may happen. I think you may see more people become freelancers because that has been the trend over the past year and a half. Anytime there is a recession and people lose their job stability or they realize that they're not going to be employed at their that their employment that they thought was safe is not actually as safe as they thought it was, it kind of starts getting them to rethink the entire idea of what a real job is, what a stable job is. And when they're forced out of their job and forced to make money on their own, you're going to have a lot of people that flounder and fail, for sure. But you're also going to have a lot of people, like the woman in this article, that wind up making more money as a freelancer for their own business than they did when they were working for somebody else. And I wonder how many people that work for companies that have more than 100 employees that don't want to get the COVID vaccine, that are going to be fired as a result of this, are going to realize that they actually make more money on their own than they did working for that particular company. This is going to be interesting. This is definitely going to be interesting. Again, for me, I got my vaccine. I encourage people to talk to their doctor about getting a vaccine, look up all the information available on it. I'm not dead. I'm good. I'm doing well. But at the same time, I would not feel comfortable forcing somebody else to get it, because I would feel like anything that happens as a result of it is on me. With COVID is out there. I didn't force you to get COVID. I didn't force inject COVID into you. So I could, but when it comes to something that I am telling you, you need to put this in you, I would feel pretty guilty if anything happened as a result of it. I honestly feel bad for my one employee who had this particular result, even though I do not have a mandate. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. By the way, Mr. Clinton, just because you show up for the last minute of the video and sit in the shadowy section where nobody can even tell there's a cat in the chair does not mean you will get paid for the video. You need to be here for the entire video. You don't get to just jump away when I start the video, Mr. Clinton. That's not how this works. Clinton? Good kitty. All right, see you all in the next video.